In a bustling town in ancient Galilee lived a man named Alara. He wasn't old, but his body felt ancient, trapped by a paralysis that had stolen his youth and his future. Every day was the same. He'd lie on his mat, watching the world move on without him, a silent observer of a life he couldn't join. The sun would rise, casting golden stripes across his room, but for Alara, it only highlighted the dust motes dancing in the air free, just like everyone else. His world had shrunk to the size of his small, quiet room. Hope was a word he hadn't dared to think in years. But Alara had something more valuable than strong legs. He had friends. 4 of them: Caleb, a strong stonemason with hands calloused from work, but a heart soft as clay; Jonah, a quick-witted weaver who could see patterns in chaos; Asher, a quiet shepherd who understood patience better than anyone; and Levi, the youngest, a fisherman's son with boundless optimism that never seemed to fade. They saw past his motionless limbs and saw the friend they grew up with, the man with a quick laugh and a sharp mind. They couldn't bear to see the light in his eyes dimming day by day. One morning, a wave of excitement washed over the town. A great teacher, a healer named Jesus, had arrived. People whispered of miracles, of the blind seeing and the lame walking. A spark ignited within Alara's for friends. This was it. This was the chance they had been praying for. They rushed to Alara's house, their faces beaming with a plan. "Alara," Caleb said, his voice booming with confidence, "we're taking you to see him. Today is the day everything changes. For the first time in a long, long time, a flicker of hope, fragile but real, warmed Alara's chest. He looked into his friend's determined eyes and nodded. Lifting him gently onto his mat, the 4 friends began their journey. The sun was high, beating down on them, but their resolve was stronger. They navigated the crowded, narrow streets, a small procession of unwavering faith. The weight of their friend was nothing compared to the weight of their hope. But as they approached the house where Jesus was teaching, their hearts sank. A massive crowd, a sea of people, blocked the entrance. It was a wall of bodies, packed so tightly that not even a whisper could squeeze through. Every doorway, every window, was crammed with eager listeners. Despair began to creep in. It seemed their journey had ended before it even began. People in the crowd jostled them, annoyed. "There's no room." A man grumbled, "Go home." Another shouted. The friends exchanged worried glances. Levi's usual optimism wavered. "What do we do now?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. They had come so far, promised so much. The look of fading hope on Alara's face was more than they could bear. Caleb looked at the impassable crowd, then his eyes drifted upwards, towards the flat roof of the house. An idea, wild and audacious, began to form in his mind. He looked at Jonah, who was already tracing a pattern in the air, then at Asher, whose calm gaze met his. A silent agreement passed between them. Their journey wasn't over, it was just getting creative. "Up," Caleb declared, pointing to the external staircase that led to the roof. "We're going up." The idea was madness. Carry a man up a narrow staircase, and then what? But in their shared desperation, madness felt like genius. They tightened their grip on Alara's mat. The climb was treacherous. The stairs were steep, and the weight of their friend felt heavier with every step. They coordinated their movements, a silent rhythm of grunts and strained muscles, driven by a single, unified purpose. Reaching the flat, clay-tiled roof, they were panting, sweat dripping from their brows, but their eyes burned with renewed determination. They were above the crowd, but still separated from the healer. Below them, through the gaps in the roof tiles, they could hear the voice of Jesus, calm and powerful, cutting through the silence of the room. This was their moment. There was no other way. With a shared nod, they began their work. Using their bare hands and a small tool Caleb carried, they started pulling at the packed earth and clay tiles. It was hard, messy work. Debris started to fall into the room below, causing a stir. Murmurs rippled through the crowd as dust and small bits of straw rained down. People looked up, confused and annoyed. Who would dare to interrupt the great teacher? The religious leaders in the room scowled, their faces tightening with indignation at such a disrespectful act, but the 4 friends didn't stop. They worked faster, their movements frantic yet focused. The hole grew larger. First a sliver of light, then a window into the room below. They could now see him, Jesus, standing in the center of the room, looking up directly at them. He wasn't angry. His expression was one of curiosity, of knowing. This spurred them on. They made the opening just wide enough for Alara's mat to pass through. Their hearts pounded in their chests. This was it, the point of no return. They tied their rope securely to the corners of the mat, their hands working with practiced energy. Alara's heart was a drum against his ribs. He was about to be lowered into a room full of strangers, a spectacle for all to see. Fear warred with a desperate, surging hope. He looked up at the faces of his four friends leaning over the opening, their expressions a mixture of strain and absolute faith. He put his trust not in the ropes, but in them. "Ready, Alara?" Asher asked softly. Alara gave the slightest nod he could manage. Slowly, carefully, they began to lower him. The room below fell silent. Every eye was now on the spectacle unfolding from the ceiling. The mat swayed gently as it descended, a vessel of faith being lowered into a sea of astonishment. He landed softly on the floor, right at Jesus' feet. The room was so quiet you could hear a pin drop. Alara lay there, vulnerable, exposed, looking up at the man everyone was talking about. He couldn't speak, his entire life's plea was in his eyes. Jesus looked down at him, but then his gaze lifted, past Alara, up through the hole in the roof to the four anxious faces peering down. A warm smile spread across his face. He saw not just a sick man, but the incredible, audacious faith of the friends who brought him there. Their love and determination had literally moved heaven and earth to get their friend to him. Then, Jesus spoke, his voice filling the room not with a grand pronouncement of healing, but with something unexpected. He looked at Alara and said gently, "Son, your sins are forgiven." A shockwave of confusion and anger went through the religious scholars in the room. Who was this man to forgive sins? Only God could do that. They began to mutter amongst themselves, their faces dark with accusation. Jesus, knowing their thoughts, turned to them. "Which is easier?" he asked, his voice calm but firm, "to say, 'Your sins are forgiven,' or to say, 'Get up, take your mat, and walk'?" He paused, letting the question hang in the air. "But so that you may know that the Son of Man has authority on earth to forgive sins. Double quotes. He then turned his full attention back to the man on the mat. All eyes were on Alara. The four friends held their breath on the roof above. Jesus' next words rang out with quiet, unshakable authority. "I tell you, get up, take your mat, and go home," a command, an impossibility. For a moment, nothing happened. Alara lay still, the words echoing in his mind. "Get up." Then, he felt it, a tingling in his toes. A warmth spreading up his legs, a strength, foreign and forgotten, surging through his limbs. Slowly, tentatively, he moved a finger, then a hand. He pushed himself up onto his elbows, his muscles, once useless, now obeying his will. The crowd gasped. He sat up. He swung his legs, once limp and lifeless, over the side of the mat, and placed his feet firmly on the ground. The crowd parted as he stood, wobbling for a second before finding his balance. He stood tall, a man reborn. A joyful, disbelieving laugh escaped his lips. He bent down, rolled up the mat that had been his prison for so long, and slung it over his shoulder. The room erupted in cheers and shouts of praise. Alara, his eyes filled with tears of joy, looked up through the hole in the roof and gave his friends a wide, beaming smile. Their faith had made him whole. He walked out through the stunned crowd, each step a miracle, each step a testament to the power of friendship and unwavering faith. The four friends on the roof hugged, their own tears of joy streaming down their faces. They had dared to believe in the impossible, and their love had created a miracle. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories of faith and hope.